Sargon's always been an interesting figure to me because I actually used to like him. I didn't watch a ton of his stuff, but I did used to like him. I thought he was an interesting political commentator. And I thought he was kind of a good bridge, I suppose you could say, between kind of normie thought and getting into kind of some more alternative points of view. Someone who kind of has one step in the mainstream and one step outside of the mainstream. And I don't think he's dumb. He's very arrogant, but I don't think he's dumb. And he often did kind of have interesting things to say. And I felt his videos were fairly well put together. And I feel that there's a struggle within Sargon's soul, and this has been very public for a long time. Because I think he realizes that the things he believes in, rule of law, freedom of speech, capitalism, human rights, all these classical liberal things, I think deep down he does realize that once his country's fundamentally transformed and isn't English anymore, and his people have been completely replaced with people who culturally and biologically don't share the same values or worldview, that these things aren't going to exist anymore. I'm sure people don't like me psychoanalyzing, but if you look at his behavior and how he goes back and forth on various things, like he was kind of like sympathetic to the alt-right, and then he was against it, and he posted a bunch of gay interracial porn, and then he went back and he was kind of liked it again, and then he hated it again, and he was kind of chummy with Millennial Woes, but then he threw Millennial Woes under the bus, and the whole thing just kind of was this back and forth. And I think, like I said, there's this conflict within him, because I think on some level he realizes that all these views he holds, all these opinions, how he wants society to be, are predicated on Britain staying British, on are things that can only exist within a white Western society, particularly a white Western Christian society. And the fact that he's able to enjoy any of these things, he kind of, I don't think he understands civilizational inertia, where the fact that some of these things kind of remain, like you'll say, oh, you can do this without Christianity, it's kind of because you have the, like I said, the civilizational inertia from back when we used to be a religious civilization. So I think he realizes this on some level. At the same level, he's also very arrogant and prideful. And pride is the worst sin. I think more than anything else, it leads to a denial of reality. And so he kind of keeps going back and forth. I also think there's the economic issue where his fan base, he kind of has an alt-light fan base and a like more left-wing fan base. And I feel like he's really afraid of alienating either one of them too much. Plus he also lives in Britain, and if he was able, he kind of walks a fine line as is because of his anti-feminism. So if he were to go further, then he might wind up like Tommy Robinson, just basically in jail permanently. So I think he has to walk a fine line, and I think there is a conflict within him that is tearing him apart. That being said, in typical Argent fashion, we are going to kind of make fun of him, and then we're going to be serious. So this is basically a desperate cry for help / suicide note, much like Brick by Brick was. So before I analyze this, I'm just going to read this, and I'm going to put on some music that I think really suits the nature of this note. Dear alt-right, I spend 0 hours per day thinking about you. I am not interested in any of your public personalities or anything that you do. You do not factor into any decision that I make. I have already spent my time investigating and debating major alt-right personalities, and now my investigation has been concluded. It's evident that your movement is incapable of achieving its goals and is losing adherents due to the toxic nature of the identity politics you are advocating. Your resistance to unfamiliar thought puts you in the realm of the religious, with a bizarre veneration of state power that could be remedied by reading authors that you pathologically rebuke, despite having no idea of what they say. I would say that we should just be friends, but the alt-right has been inexplicably cruel to me, my family, and everyone else who refuses to agree with you, and so I have no interest in dealing with you at all. I suggest you ignore me, as I ignore you, and get on with whatever it is that gives meaning to your lives. Good luck with the white race. Have a nice day. Anyways, yeah, so I'm sure people know that reference. I used that reference a little while ago in another video. But I digress. So let's actually kind of break this down. So, okay, so Sargon of Akkad, it's on Skype, very nice. I think he was banned from Twitter for some reason, despite his views largely being pretty PC. So he got banned from Twitter, so V posted this, but I couldn't find it under V's... I couldn't find it either under Sargon's Facebook page or under V's Twitter, but he obviously put this up, so I had to go to another video and find it. But I only bring that up because this seems to be, at least in my experience with Sargon, like what he did with the liberalist principles, where he put them up and then he took them down. Like, I think he put them up and he did like a video on them, or V did a video on them or something, and then he took them down and completely changed them, but they left the other video up. I don't know, this just seems to be something he does. Dear alt-right, I spent 0 hours per day thinking about you. Now this is an interesting way. I don't know why this is past tense. Because, like, shouldn't it be like I have spent? Or I spend? Because it sounds like the tense of this just doesn't really make sense to me. If he's saying I spend 0 hours per day thinking about you, but now I think about you all the time, isn't that kind of what the spent? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. And obviously he isn't, because maybe he's giving us like a rolling average. But if you add up the videos he's done with like Spencer and Millennial Woes, the videos, like the calls he's done with them and the other videos he's done, I guess that would be less than an hour per day on average, but it wouldn't be less than no time per day on average, because this would put that over, just this letter alone would mean he at least spent a couple seconds a day. I don't really get what he's saying here. Like I said, this kind of sounds like a suicide note. I'm not interested in any of your public personalities or anything that you do. I'm not interested in any of your public personalities or anything that you do. I don't know, the public personalities are pretty bad, to be honest. Jared Taylor's really the only one I have any sympathy for at this point. Most of them are just kind of like weirdos or have become lolcows, etc., or just kind of disappeared. I mean, and this kind of gets to an issue. People often ask me, Argent, are you alt-right? And that's kind of an interesting question. I definitely was for a long time, and I never stopped. Like, I never disavowed the movement. I never stated I was outside of it. It's just not a thing anymore. With a combination of Charlottesville and all the retardation involved with that, Doxgate, just a whole bunch of scandals, just a lot of the different publications getting shut down, a lot of the leadership just kind of in disarray. It's just not a thing anymore. So it's kind of like asking at this point, were you a member of the Jacobin Club? Were you a Thermidorian? Were you was it Tredovuk? Were you a Decemberist? Like, just kind of an obsolete political term that doesn't really apply anymore. So I was kind of part of the broader the other thing you have to keep in mind is the alt-right was never really it was always a mixture of different ideas. It was kind of a grand coalition of semi-related ideas, all people who were brought together out of a rejection of the idea that people are interchangeable. And kind of, like in kind of my philosophy, an acceptance of kind of political naturalism to a certain extent. But yeah, so it's kind of nebulous. It's also something that doesn't really. Yeah. I have already spent my time investing. You do not factor into any decisions I make. Okay. Why would they factor into any decisions he makes? Sargon doesn't factor into any decisions I make. Like I said, this sounds like a suicide note. I've already spent my time investigating, debating major alt-right personalities, and now my investigation has concluded. Like he didn't. How many people did he debate? He debated like Millennial Woes, Richard Spencer, etc. Just most of the people he debated were not particularly. I don't know. What would be the term? Competent. Um, I don't know how to put it, but he didn't exactly pick the best people to debate to try to prove his point, so to speak. It's evident that your movement is incapable of achieving its goals and is losing adherents due to the toxic nature of the identity politics you're advocating. So, the whole movement is based on identity politics, be it male, Christian, or white, or whatever the local ethnicity is, politics. So, in order to achieve the goal of the movement, which is identity politics, you have to abandon identity politics. So if you were to say race doesn't matter, then the ethno state would just happen tomorrow. I guess is I know that's maybe not what he's saying, but that's logically, if I read this as if English is my first language. Sargon's from Britain, I think, so English probably isn't his first language. But let's see here. It's evident that your movement is okay. There is a toxic nature thing, and a lot of that just comes from the fact a lot of this, the people kind of in these spheres are from 4chan or from, well, I guess Poll is part of 4chan or like from meme boards, etc. The movement was kind of initially founded and made up largely of disaffected teens, teens and millennials and I guess millennials and Gen Z and some Gen Xers who are disaffected, maybe feel a lot of them feel alienated. A lot of them probably have depression or social anxiety. That's not necessarily their fault. In a lot of cases, it is the environment they were raised in, be it their difficulties finding employment, being raised devoid of their cultural inheritance, not having a proper religious upbringing, being raised in a home that was broken because of boomer excess, going into a very difficult economy. Like there's reasons for these. When I say that a lot of the people who enter these spheres are very troubled, I don't mean that as an insult, nor do I mean it's blaming them. And there's a frequent thing where people say, "Oh, your ideas are all a power fantasy. You just want society to work for you personally." Well, of course you want society to work for you personally. I mean, that's like so I don't understand how that's really an argument per se. But even if it is kind of a projection to a certain extent, like you have to understand there's a difference between the reason why somebody holds their views and whether or not the views themselves are true. So whenever we talk about any of our kind of policies, whether or not we hold those because the person in question has an inferiority complex, or whether somebody holds those views because they have a legitimate ideological commitment to it, neither one really makes the argument or the point of view less legitimate. It just makes the person kind of more of a mess. So there is a lot of toxicity, though. Like I said, myself included, a lot of us are kind of socially awkward, alienated, etc. And the fact that it was kind of innately based on trolling people and like really cynical memes and stuff, and the fact that like a lot of the movement is neo-sincerity, but that's kind of the true for all political movements at this point. So your resistance to unfamiliar thought puts you in the realm of the religious. Now this is kind of a fascinating point to make, because the vast majority of people who hold outright views were raised in liberal families and come from liberal societies. Even if they come from like a center right or kind of a normie conservative family, they've probably never been exposed to these ideals. Traditionalism, race realism, kind of patriarchy is a good thing. In fact, pretty much everybody in this sphere, these ideas were something that they adopted. In many cases, very difficultly. Like a lot of people grew up liberals or grew up socialists or grew up leftists, and kind of experience made them alt-right. There's an expression that a conservative is a liberal who's been mugged by reality. I like to say an alt-rightist is a liberal who's been raped by diversity. Is kind of my variant of it. But no, it's a bizarre point to make, because pretty much everyone in these circles, by holding the views they hold, are a complete anathema and are completely different from regular society. It can't just be that they looked at both and they picked the latter. No, puts you in the realm of the religious. Okay, what's his point? Like I love this smug douchey. Oh, it's the realm of the religious people. Okay, so if it's a like I don't get how that's an argument. Like, okay, it's a religion, because he's an atheist, so he thinks religion is inherently bad, and he expects you to agree with that. And he's resistant to unfamiliar thought. He's 100% committed to his liberalist state. Like, you could ask him, like, what if people will vote? Like, I've never heard a real answer to this, but like, what if people in your state vote against freedom of speech? Well, they just aren't going to do that. Well, what if they do? Then it's just something that's going to happen, and I'm willing to live with that because I believe so. I believe blindly that everybody wants the same thing that I want. If anything, kind of our side is willing to accept that people have different worldviews, people have different desires, and to try to harmonize everything together and pretend all people the same is bad, is wrong, and what you have to do is not be resistant to unfamiliar thought. You have to accept it with a bizarre veneration of state power. I don't know what that means, to be honest. I guess because there's all kinds of people. Like I said, the core of the movement was founded over a rejection of human interchangeability. There were people who were like fascists who wanted more state power. There were libertarians who wanted less. There's people like me who are kind of in the center on that issue. I don't understand what he's referring to. Well, I do. There's this idea that just because that any form of identitarianism necessitates an all-powerful state. Whereas within his ideology, within the liberalist state, you would need basically a totalitarian police state to repress any form of political thought or movement that rejects the liberalist consensus. Let's see here. That could be remedied by reading authors that you pathologically rebuke despite having no idea of what they say. How do you know that they haven't read them? Because they don't agree with them? I mean, people can read things and not agree with it. Like, so these people might have actually read it and then just not agreed with it. Like, I don't think people are obligated to read everything, Sargon. Like, it's like they just aren't interested in you and your ideas, because your ideas are irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Like, Locke or Rousseau or whoever you want us to read could write the best argument of all time. It doesn't change the fact that it has zero appeal to the replacement population and is just kind of irrelevant. Like it's yeah. I would like to say that we should just be friends. Why can't we be friends? Why can't we be friends? But the alt-right has been inexplicably cruel to me. Like when I went on and I posted that gay interracial porn, and when I called them white niggers, and when I did all this other stuff to antagonize them. That stuff was like, I don't know why that triggered people. I don't know why my condescending videos irritated people. But they're inexplicably cruel. Like, he's just so arrogant. Do I think a lot of, like, he probably got trolled over the top? Yeah, but Sargon is kind of a self-parody. The fact that he calls himself Sargon of Akkad, his Patreon used to say Sargon is creating arguments in philosophy. He's just so smug and so self-important. He's just kind of ripe for the satire. My family. Oh, did anyone care about his family? I think the only thing is because he lied about his ethnic background, and that was pretty much it. And anyone else who refuses to agree with you, the isn't he being cruel to us by posting this video? This post? I don't know. So I have no interest in dealing with you at all. But you're going to deal with SJWs. You're going to deal with feminists. You're going to deal with you're going to deal with all these other people you hate, etc. I suggest you ignore me as I ignore you, and get on with whatever it is that gives meaning to your lives. Like I said, this sounds like a suicide note. I suggest you ignore me as I ignore you, and get on with whatever it is that gives meaning to your lives. Okay. We're just I don't even get what this is about. Good luck with the white race. Having a great day. I guess I don't even know what that means. Like, I guess that's like him trying to be clever. I don't even know what he's trying to say with this. I think this is just him like trying to trigger people, but he just does it in a really lame way. Sargon, Sargon, Sargon. What are we gonna do with you, man? This is embarrassing. But like I said, I don't really know what else to say about this. I don't know if this was done to try to appease his more like centrist or left wing fans, maybe to try to get the British government off his back. Maybe somebody trolled him and he got angry. Who knows? But that was Sargon's love letter / cry for help / suicide note. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.